last edit that we'll have to do. So just talking about what has been integrated so far. Our first change was this statement. Now it reads something that both students and faculty will understand as being a satisfaction of the following lists of expected skills and materials for each course. So portfolios should include items that satisfy these lists of expected skills and materials for each course. For drawing 1, we retain the expected materials and skills. I'm going to talk about these changes in a moment because they're somewhat complicated, but not really. So just in an effort to kind of rear ground them and foreground some of the simpler changes in this explanation, I'm going to hold off. So bear with me. So for drawing, really we added Conti and ink. We amended graphite to say graphite and in parentheses pencil so the students would understand clearly. And Kate suggested that we add pencils, color pencils and pastels. In the expected skills column, Kate suggested I think, recommendations from someone who was helping her edit, which, all kudos to Kate for doing that. Something I should definitely probably take advantage of. I think, and it may not have been suggested by that person, but I do know that in contemporary pedagogy, there's a real emphasis on action words. And when we think about the word skills, it's doing something. It's not just a list of something. So when they're demonstrating, that means they're not just life observational drawing. It's that they are demonstrating the ability or the skill of drawing from life or observation. So I like that integration or that modification of the language. Create still life, architectural or landscape drawings. Use or employ gesture, line, / contour, and tonal drawing. So those were new phraseologies more than they were new additions. These stayed as similar wording as far as action is concerned, the demonstration of proportion and scale, not just proportion and scale, the representation of perspective and space, not just the list. So I think you understand comprehension of value, light, and shadow. And then I changed the demonstration of compositional organization, which was a change from just the list of composition to organized compositions. Under 2D, again, we'll put off talking about these qualifiers here. Kate suggested we add photography and digital media to ink, acrylic paint, watercolor paint, pens, of course, was changed from rapidograph pens, collage, colored pencils, photography, and digital media. Then we come over here, and there was an addition of space. There was an addition by Kate of scale, another addition by me of rhythm. Aaron suggested secondary, and Daniel suggested analogous. I added color, and I think that in addition to I'm sorry, let me step back for a second. These color harmonies include primary, secondary, and tertiary color, and they can be, I guess, designated as a monochromatic scheme, an analogous scheme, a complementary scheme. Secondary was added by Aaron. Daniel Kornrumpf suggested analogous, and Kate Winley suggested triadic. Again, I placed organized compositions in that column. Moving down to here, I think in addition to the already listed categories, we had wire and foam added by Daniel Kornrumpf. and mixed media. I believe Kate added mixed media. We come over here to this side, and really not much changed. Everything is very similar to what we're seeing under 2D design as far as the elements and principles. Really, it's these techniques of additive and subtractive carving, relief, constructive assemblage. I would probably say this should be subtractive and carving are ubiquitous. I think this is more in the round versus relief. Those are the two types of sculptural three-dimensional approaches. And then, again, organized compositions. Now, let's go back up to the top and talk about these repeated explanatory sentences. So Kate and I were talking, and Kate mentioned that perhaps we should integrate imagination and research into what we were assessing. Because obviously, if you're just doing a dry, demonstration of materials and skills, that's one thing. But what we really want to see out of students of high quality is imaginative creativity or improvisation or uniqueness or innovation. But we also want to see a grounding in research and looking at other artists and exploring their subject matter through studying it in literature or going out in nature and observing it, etc. And in the course of the back and forth that Kate and I were having about these terms, imagination and research, to me, it just reminded me of the current assessment that we use for foundation portfolio review, which are comprehension, creativity, and craftsmanship. So, to me, creativity is the fusion of imagination and improvisation and research. So I combine those into the word creative. And comprehension of the skills is, something that we're wanting them to demonstrate in these skill sets. So it seemed very natural that under skills, the students should include a representative sampling that demonstrates the comprehension and creative use of most of the following skills. And because of the current assessment for portfolio review being these 1, 2, 3 items, I did feel, craftsmanship is all about material ability and dexterity. So adding in craftsmanship should include a representative sampling that demonstrates craftsmanship with several of the following materials. So that way we're hitting all 3 of those, I guess, categories of how we kind of term the understanding and imaginative or innovative use of skills and craftsmanship, material awareness of these particular tools and materials. Daniel suggested changing most of these materials to several, because we can't expect all classes to demonstrate all of these materials. So giving them abilities, the students' abilities, and the faculty the ability to say, we have a bunch of these different materials that we're observing the student using and demonstrating good craftsmanship, seemed a little more open. Over in the skills column, it's of most of the following skills, because most of the classes should be and are, I think, demonstrating all of these ideas. And of course, there's a lot of overlap in almost every drawing that we do in my drawing class, and I'm sure in yours as well. So I just repeated those qualifiers for all 3 of the courses. And then when we come down to the assessment itself, the list, I want you to notice numbers here. So in the current assessment portfolio rubric, or the portfolio assessment rubric. My apologies. We have criteria and scores. Now, as it stands, currently we have 1 through 4, 1 being unsatisfactory, 4 being exemplary. Under criteria, currently, right now, we have 10 categories. So, at the very least, we have those 10 categories, and in this document, we only have 3. And if you were to really tease it out, we have 10 categories and 4 possible points of analysis. That's 40 variables that we're playing with when we're using the Foundations assessment tool. Here, we only have 3 times 4 equals 12. So I think that's surely a simplification of the process, which is what we're going for. I added scoring and criteria, and then in order to mirror what we have in these descriptors up here, I just borrowed them and placed them in the rubric itself. Portfolio includes a representative sampling that demonstrates craftsmanship with several of the materials. Portfolio includes a representative sampling that demonstrates the comprehension and creative use of most of the skills. Okay. Now, if we move on down, we get to what the levels themselves mean. Artworks display competency and shows exemplary knowledge and the creative use of all skills and materials listed for the score. Score will be 4. On leisure level 3, you have 2 choices. Either all of the skills and materials are represented in the portfolio and the student shows competence in a moderately creative approach instead of exemplary and exemplary knowledge and creative use in each one of them, or B, most but not all of the skills are represented, and the student shows exemplary knowledge and the creative use of the ones that are represented. Score of 2 is A, all of the skills and materials are represented and the student shows emerging knowledge in each of them, but creativity is a missing element in this group of works. B, most but not all of the skills are represented and the student shows competence in a moderately creative approach in the use of each one of them. Finally, level 1, the student displays unsatisfactory knowledge of the skills and materials listed, regardless of how many are represented. And or B, the student displays emerging knowledge of the skills and materials represented in the portfolio, but less than 70% of the skills and materials are represented. Finally, description of the average for the scores. So that should probably average of scores. The artwork submitted will each earn a separate score. The scores will then be averaged. Students will earn a grade of pass for Foundations Portfolio Review when earning a minimum average score of 2 grades of D, F, or W. Eliminate students from review consideration, meaning if they get any of these grades in we should probably specify. And I think that should be at the first. Down here, was an addition that was very important that I remembered kind of last minute that we had talked about at the meetings. What happens if the student fails a portfolio review? Well, we will direct them to either A, retake the courses with low scores and re-review the following semester, or B, choose to pursue a minor in art, or C, or choose to explore disciplines outside of the visual arts. If a student fails portfolio review twice, student will be advised to change majors. Okay, so that's it. Please, if you have any additions, I'm going to send you a clean document with no highlighting. Actually, never mind. I'll send you this exact same document. If you have additions, just make them and highlight with your color. Yellow for Daniel, purple for Kate, and I believe it was blue for Aaron. Okay, and then send it back my way. I'll integrate the changes, and hopefully this will be our last time around the block. Thanks, folks.